So, we can talk about the manipulation and all the other things we want, all we want, but it still takes a buyer and a seller to create price. So it doesn't really matter if they're manipulating it lower, they're finding buyers to buy from them. And we all know that at some point, silver is going to explode again at some day and go much higher than it is. But again, for now, it drifts in nowhere land.
Joining us today on Wall Street Silver is Todd Bubba Horwitz of BubbaTrading.com. Bubba, thanks for joining us today.
Ivan and Jim, it's great to be back with you guys. I look forward to it, and I'm really looking forward to today.
Awesome, thank you. So, Bubba, do you see silver breaking to the downside before another sustained bull run, or is it reasonable to assume that this $23 per ounce for silver was the bottom?
You know what? I don't think it's the bottom. I think silver looks really rotten, and but it has been in a very narrow range. So you can look at it a couple of different ways. And so when you ask me if the bottoms are in, they could be. I mean, I bought some physical silver on the way down, which I will hold forever. Yeah. However, from a trading position, I'm short, and I will stay short until the trend changes and proves to me that it can go higher. But it really looks sloppy. Looks like we're going to test those flash crash lows of a few weeks ago.
Do you expect Treasury yields to rise in the coming months?
I do think they're going to rise. I think what we're seeing right now is we're seeing the idiots at the Federal Reserve trying to float some test balloons to see, what they can get away with, because this ridiculous free money printing is a joke, and they've dug themselves into a deep hole because of how much money that has been borrowed for stimulus. So it's hard to raise rates because you're raising the rates on what the government is going to charge, what they're going to pay for their interest rates. So, but I do think they're going to go higher, and I think we're going to see some massive inflation, and we have the potential, the way this administration runs things, to get stagflation, which would be obviously the worst.
Well, let's just talk about the broader markets and the interplay between what's going on. I mean, it seems like the broader markets are selling off right now. We've had a few negative days in a row. Dow's been looking pretty weak. The Russell 2000 has been looking extremely weak. NASDAQ, which has just been like kind of the leader and so strong, seems to maybe start weakening. How is this? I mean, let's say we start selling off pretty big here. How's that going to impact the price of precious metals?
Well, I think we've watched precious metals, and I really haven't reacted one way or the other. I think you've seen a minor change in trend in gold, which is up now. However, the markets themselves, as long as money stays as inexpensive as it is, and as you mentioned, the 10-year plunged again today, people that can invest, the billionaires of the world, are going to continue to borrow money and pour it into the stock market. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to imagine that a major sell-off is coming anytime soon. Now, again, it won't announce itself, and it'll just show up when the market starts to sell off. It'll just show up, but there is really not a lot of indication yet, and we still have a couple of slow days left. We just came off of the Labor Day holiday, the Jewish holidays, and of course next week is Yom Kippur. So you've got very little volume, which pushes these markets a little bit faster. But certainly there could be a massive meltdown, but it's going to not be yet. I don't think.
So let's talk about trading volume. I mean, obviously, it's pretty heavy in the big indices. Generally speaking, year round. I mean, we have our slow periods. We have our slow periods during the day. We have our summer kind of slowdown. But how does that compare to the precious metals market? I would imagine that those markets are much, much thinner.
They are much thinner. Listen, we saw, a few weeks ago, we saw that flash crash overnight. They're very thin. And, especially now, you've got a lot of very nervous people in the precious metals side now for no reason, but they're nervous. And of course, thin volume brings in much wider swings. Mm-hmm. And you can see them. We saw Friday after the jobs number, gold and silver spiked up, and gold has really come back and really settled around that 1800, just below it right now. And silver continues to go lower again and looks to be making new lows. So, the volume is so thin, it's hard to get real excited at this moment when we watch these markets, because there is no support on either side to see the sellers come in and dominate to push to the downside, or buyers to come in and push it back to the upside.
So now you have two totally different philosophies when it comes to precious metals.
I do. Listen.
You trade them short term and then you buy them long term. Is that correct?
100%. You nailed it. I mean, listen, I'm a big believer in precious metals, and I think every portfolio should have some representation of precious metals. I think gold, silver, and platinum are, and which is what I buy on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. But when I'm trading, I can trade short and still be long the physical because I will hold the physicals. And as I tell everybody, I'll never sell them. My kids, when I drop, my kids will sell the precious metals, but I'm going to hold them and continue to buy. I mean, I think from an investment standpoint, silver is a great buy at these levels. But from our algorithm standpoint and my trading standpoint, we've been short and we continue to be short both silver and platinum, but long gold at the moment.
So, Bubba, do you see sustained inflation fueling a silver price rise before year end, or is it something else on the horizon?
Well, I think there's a lot going on, but the first problem we have is again, we go back to the geniuses at the Federal Reserve that have no clue, right? They have no idea where they are. They go into the ivory tower, they become idiots. So we've got a market that if they would recognize inflation, which they refuse to do. So we have them telling us it's only transitory, and then they went to temporary. And a couple of the Fed governors said, well, maybe we really have inflation. Maybe we should count food and energy, which look at the price of food and energy. We should have a metals rally based on what's going on in inflation. However, because they keep rates low, the money continues to flow into the equity markets, which is money that would be flowing in the metals normally.
So from a trader's perspective, with the current price action, what would make you flip from short to long?
Well, I'd have to see some sustained rallies, first of all. I mean, right now, like if we're looking today, we'd have to get back through 25 and show that it could actually hold the 25 level. I mean, right now, silver closed today at 24 and change. We haven't been able to hold any real level. And what happens is we get into this consolidation and then they fall further. And I think that until we can see a sustained rally and hold some key support levels, we're going to continue to drift lower. Now, remember, we have very little volume, so it makes it even more of a challenge right now. But I do see, once we get to a certain level and we can start to hold some support, it would certainly flip, and I would certainly love to be long. I mean, I'm never a huge fan of being short silver at these prices.
So you're one of the infamous silver shorts, huh?
Yeah, I'm one of those guys. I'll tell you, it's. I tell you one thing about that, though. We can talk about the manipulation and all the other things all we want, but it still takes a buyer and a seller to create price. So it doesn't really matter if they're manipulating it lower, they're finding buyers to buy from them. And we all know that at some point, silver is going to explode again at some day and go much higher than it is. But again, for now, it drifts in nowhere land.
What is your perspective on the manipulation?
I don't know. I've heard it. Listen, I know things go on in markets, but the thing I always go back to is no matter how much somebody's trying to manipulate either up or down, there still has to be another side to the trade. So, the only story I can tell you is my grandmother liked the harness racing horses. And we said, Grandma, the horses are crooked. She said, well, maybe I'll bet on a crooked horse. Okay. So I think it doesn't really matter. And if you're an investor in silver, let them manipulate away. Let me buy at better prices. And if there is no manipulation, then let it trade free. But one of the big problems we have in the trading world today, and in this country for sure, is a lack of true price discovery because everything is based on what interest rates are, which are manipulated or controlled by the Federal Reserve, which has now become a branch of the government, which it's not supposed to be.
I mean, is it fair to say that they control the economy?
Yes, they control everything, which is they control the destruction of our dollars. Okay. Central banks around the globe. It's not just the Fed. Every central bank wants to bring their currency down to zero. I'm telling you this, and I'll say it to you guys. I believe that they all are plotting to bring out a digital currency, okay, that will be almost like a global coin, which would then appease China because they would be part of the system and have one coin because these central bankers continue to destroy everything in front of them. I mean, take a look at the values of what you have and how fast it depreciates. Even with you're making higher wages. Yeah. So what? It's not the money today is less than the same money in 1985.
What advice would you give to people in Wall Street Silver from a trader's perspective, and then also from a longer term investor's perspective?
Well, I'm going to make one assumption. I think that probably most people listening are not traders, and they don't like to be the short side. They want to see metals go higher. Okay. So, I mean, I would trade the trend, and right now the trend is lower. But I think that if you want to be a buyer, you have to buy not on leverage, not paper. You have to buy physical metals and store them, and only invest what you can afford. Because I assure you of one thing: if you have to sell, okay, you're not going to get the price you want, because that means there's a much bigger problem. So you can only invest money that you can hold on to, so that you can weather if we have another big sell-off. You have to be able to weather the storm. So please don't over leverage any portfolio. I don't care how much of a believer you are. Make sure you got the cash, because at the end of the day, the money will tell the story. And if you get forced out, it will not be at the prices you want to sell.
So you wouldn't suggest someone cashes out their retirement fund and open a trading account and just leverage to the hilt and buy silver, huh?
No, sir. I think too many people have done that, and I think we can all see where they end up in, and that is in tears.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we have some younger players in our group. They're part of the Wall Street Bets crowd. They're kind of expecting immediate action. Is that something you should not do when you're looking at precious metals?
Well, I think that you're making a huge mistake. And again, we've been through this numbers of times over the years, under different guises. But, we had the NASDAQ bubble in the 90s, and it was easy. And what people forget is all that capital gains, all that money they made. And then when you get the big collapse, which you will get, okay, you got to pay taxes on that money you don't have anymore. And I think that you have to, follow the trends, quit chasing momentum, and put yourself again in the proper risk tolerance. Because a lot of people have made a lot of money with what's going on right now, but I assure you, and I will bet on it, that most of them will end up busted with nothing, because they've chased it up. And once it starts to go, you get the story, right? That can't be right. Well, it is right. And that's what's going to happen.
I mean, isn't it fair to say, though, when you're investing in precious metals and you actually take physical possession of it, you're not really worried about that stuff, because at the end of the day, yeah.
That's why you should, first of all, that's why you should take physical delivery. God forbid we would need it as a currency someday, right? But so you should always take physical delivery, and it should always be with dollars you can afford. When you want to trade it on the board, great. But paper, silver, I don't think there's enough paper gold or paper silver in the world to cover what's out there. Okay, yeah. I think there's a whole nother game going on there. And in someday, there may be a massive short squeeze, okay, in the metals, because I do believe that the paper is way overdone, and we've got too many people too far over leveraged. Okay, so holding the physical, I think, is a much more valued asset, but it should be done with something you can afford, and not ever sell it because you need to sell it. If you want to sell because you made a lot of money, hey, I got no problem with that. But I would tell you that don't get forced out, because again, people that get forced out are never getting anywhere near what they paid for it and end up in tears.
Bubba, with more solar energy laws being passed, do you see silver being like there's a shortage coming in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I mean, again, this is where I have to look at price, right? I'm not a fundamentalist at all. I don't care about any fundamentals. I go on record as I don't watch the news. I watch Vegas Sports Information Network all day long. Okay, that's what I watch. I've never read, in 44 years of trading, I've never read the Wall Street Journal of Barron's. Now I am on the news, right? I do interviews, but I don't read it because it's garbage. Okay, you guys bring real information to people, but the stuff you're seeing is garbage. Are we going to have a big short? I don't know. But the price tells me that right now, nobody is concerned about a shortage of silver. Okay. Now, because we talked about this last time, I don't see it, but certainly it wouldn't surprise me someday. But I cannot go on record and make some predictions because I don't believe it myself. So why would I want to go ahead and predict?
While I agree with you, I mean, that's a classic trader's kind of perspective. Most traders will not trade on news because we all know, like, the markets move before the news comes out usually.
Right.
But from a standpoint of precious metals, specifically silver, we have two fundamentally different markets here. We have the physical market for silver. And we've actually experienced some shortages this year in that. And then we have the paper market in silver. That's pretty much like fiat silver. Would you say that the fundamentals apply to long-term view of silver as opposed to looking at just the spot price, which is based on paper silver?
100%. Again, I'm not a fundamental trader.
Yeah.
But I do, when I buy anything, I want to make sure that I believe it's going to have value 10 years from now. Okay. Or whatever time period that you want to, whatever your horizon is. So listen, I agree 100%. As I said in the opening, I am a big fan of precious metals, and I could see another massive, crazy move in silver. I mean, hell, I remember we went up to 50 the first time. Okay. And so we could see one of those moves again, but unfortunately, it's not going to announce itself, and I don't send the telegram out letting us know that's going to happen. So it's the preparation of following the trends and continuing to buy and store, because that's where the value is going to come in. No matter how it plays out, the real value is going to be in what you own.
What are you stacking right now? Like 100-ounce bars, physical bars? What are you doing?
I'm 100-ounce bars is what I'm stacking. I stack smaller in gold and platinum because, I think of it that I may need it as a currency someday. And what am I going to do with a 200-ounce bar of gold, right? So, well, think about it. I mean, what would I do with it, right? Where am I going to go? So but I do, and I have I've been saving silver since 1964. Okay?
Wow.
As when the quarters and when they stopped making it, okay, my dad and I started putting it in coffee cans, okay? And I haven't gotten rid of any of that. So I have a lot of junk silver, which is obviously real silver, but I would never sell that either. And I think that you just have to make sure that I have a lot of 100-ounce bars, but I also believe that you better have some smaller quantities, because if doomsday comes and you need the currency, okay, you want to be able to make change. You don't want to have to, overpay for something because you have just big denominations.
You want to walk around with those 100-ounce bars down in the supermarket.
They're heavy, man.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been great.
I certainly appreciate you having me back, and I enjoyed it. And I always love being able to speak freely with you guys. And I think that's what you guys deliver as a message, and it's always appreciated.
Again,
thank you. We'll definitely have you back on in a couple months to talk about the markets as they develop.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to count the days.
Awesome. Thank you again, Bubba, and thank you everyone from the Wall Street Silver community. Take care.